The registration terminal beeped 3 times before Owen Harper realized he was pressing too hard again. Another cracked screen. He pulled his hand back and muttered an apology to the nervous Quellen attendant, whose crystalline body flickered with anxious purple light. "It happens frequently with your species," the attendant said, their voice like wind chimes. "Please proceed to Orientation Hall 7. Owen grabbed his bag and headed down the corridor of Galactic Concordance University. The station orbited Harmonia, a garden world so peaceful that predators had never evolved there. Students from hundreds of species filled the hallways, and Owen noticed how they moved around him, giving him extra space. He was used to it by now. Rita Delgado sat in the back row of the orientation hall, watching other students file in. Most wore environmental suits or floated in mobility tanks. A Hulan named Tav took the seat beside her, his large herbivore eyes watching her carefully. "You are human, yes?" Tav asked. "That's right," Rita said with a smile. "I have read about Earth, a Class 12 world." Tav's ears twitched nervously. "You have my respect for surviving such a place." Rita had heard this before. To most of the galaxy, Earth was a nightmare world of extreme weather, aggressive wildlife, and constant danger. She tried to explain that it wasn't that bad, but Tav looked doubtful. Ben Okafor arrived last, ducking through the doorway that was built for smaller species. He squeezed into a seat near the front, trying to make himself less noticeable. It didn't work. A small Vreen named Pip perched nearby, staring at him with wide eyes. "You are very large," Pip chirped. "Sorry," Ben said automatically. No, it is fascinating. Your bone density must be incredible to support such mass in standard gravity." Ben had never thought about his bones being special. But to Pip, everything about humans seemed amazing and terrifying in equal measure. Professor Million floated to the podium, their crystalline form refracting light into rainbow patterns. They began the standard welcome speech, talking about the university's proud history and academic excellence. Then they reached the part everyone dreaded. "The survival course is mandatory for all first-year students," Professor Million announced. "You will spend 3 weeks on Serenity 7, learning essential skills for unexpected emergencies." A wave of worried murmurs spread through the hall. Several students activated translation devices to make sure they heard correctly. "Serenity 7 has standard gravity," Tav whispered to Rita. Sounding horrified, Rita nodded, not understanding why that was scary. Standard gravity in galactic terms meant Earth-like gravity, which was extreme for most species. Their homeworlds had much gentler pulls. "The moon has been carefully selected for its mild conditions," Professor Million continued. "Weather patterns are stable, wildlife is docile, and emergency shelters are positioned every 5 kilometers. Owen leaned over to another human student. "Sounds like a camping trip." "Yeah, pretty easy," the student agreed. Pip's head swiveled around. "Easy? The temperature drops to 15 degrees at night." 15 Celsius, Owen asked. "That's actually nice weather." Pip's feathers puffed up in distress. 15 degrees was well below the freezing point of their body chemistry. They would need a heated suit just to survive. After orientation, the 3 humans found themselves walking together toward the dormitories. Other students gave them a wide berth in the corridors. "Did you see how scared they looked?" Rita asked. "They think this survival course is dangerous. My roommate asked if I needed special equipment to survive the trip," Ben said. "I told him just regular clothes and maybe a jacket." "A jacket," Rita repeated, shaking her head. Meanwhile, half the students are arranging emergency medical standby and writing their wills. Owen stopped at a bench to adjust his bag. He sat down and the metal frame groaned under him. Then it bent. Then it broke completely, dumping him onto the floor. Students nearby scattered in panic. "I barely touched it," Owen said, standing up and looking at the twisted metal. A maintenance drone hurried over, scanning the damage. "Furniture rated for up to 300 harmony and weight units. You exceed specifications." "I'm not even that heavy for a human," Owen protested. The drone didn't respond, just began tagging the broken bench for replacement. This happened a lot in the first weeks. The station was built for species that evolved on low-gravity worlds. Everything was lighter, more delicate. Humans had to move carefully just to avoid breaking things. Rita helped Owen with his bag. "We should probably practice being gentle. Don't want to scare everyone before we even start." "Too late for that," Ben said, pointing back at the crowd of students who were now keeping an even greater distance from them. That evening, Owen read through the survival course materials in his dorm. The equipment list included thermal suits, emergency beacons, nutrient supplements, and medical kits designed for extreme trauma. The course manual emphasized the dangers they would face, including cold nights, uneven terrain, and the challenge of finding safe food and water. He thought about camping trips with his family as a kid. They did all of this for fun on weekends. His little sister had completed her first solo overnight camp at age 12. According to the manual, the survival course was designed to push students to their absolute limits, testing their courage and resourcefulness. Owen closed the manual and looked out his window at the stars. Earth hung in the distance, a blue and white marble that looked peaceful from here. He knew what it was really like. The hurricanes that could flatten cities, the deserts that could kill you in hours, the oceans full of creatures with teeth and venom and hunting instincts that went back millions of years. For the first time, Owen understood what Professor Million and the other students saw when they looked at humans. They saw survivors of a world that tried very hard to kill everything on it. They saw creatures that thrived in conditions that would be classified as natural disasters on most planets. The survival course was going to be interesting. Serenity 7 looked like a postcard from a peaceful dream. Green hills rolled across the landscape under a pale blue sky. A gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers and fresh water. For most species in the galaxy, this moon represented the upper limit of survivable conditions. The transport ships landed in a clearing surrounded by soft grass. Owen watched as the cargo doors opened and students emerged in various states of protective gear. Tav wore a gravity compensation harness that whined with the effort of keeping him upright. Nira's habitat tank had been reinforced with extra shielding and loaded onto a hovering platform. Pip wore a full environmental suit with temperature controls and oxygen supplements. The three humans stepped off their transport wearing t-shirts and pants. "Is this all you brought?" Professor Million asked, their crystalline form flickering with concern. "No protective equipment?" "We have jackets in our bags," Rita said, holding up her small backpack. "In case it gets chilly tonight." Professor Million's color shifted to a worried orange. They consulted their datapad, checking the human biological specifications for the third time that morning. Everything was correct. Humans really could just walk around in this environment without any assistance. "Please proceed to the assembly area," Professor Million said finally, deciding to trust the data. The assembly area was a flat section of ground marked with flags. Students gathered in small groups, many of them already looking tired from the short walk from the landing zone. Tav was breathing heavily, his harness working overtime. "Your first task," Professor Million announced, "is to construct shelters before nightfall. You may use any natural materials you find, along with the basic tools provided. This is a week 1 level challenge, so do not feel discouraged if you need the entire day." Supply crates were distributed to each group. Owen opened his and found a small folding saw, some rope, and a fire-starting kit that used chemical ignition. He looked around at the forest nearby. This was going to be simple. Ben was already walking toward the trees, studying their structure. Rita joined him, identifying species and testing bark strength with her hands. She pulled on a dead branch and it snapped off cleanly. "Good size for a frame," she said, carrying it back to their site. Nira watched from her tank. "You touched it with your bare hands? What if it had parasites or toxins?" "I can see it's dead and dried out," Rita explained. "No signs of rot or insect damage. Should be safe. You can determine all that by looking." Nira's translator carried her amazement clearly. Within an hour, the humans had gathered materials and begun construction. Owen used the saw to cut support poles, working quickly through wood that was soft by Earth standards. Ben lifted logs that normally would require anti-gravity assists, carrying them like they weighed nothing. Rita wove smaller branches into walls, her hands moving with practiced ease. Other students watched with growing alarm. Tav had managed to drag one small branch to his site and was resting from the effort. Pip had barely started gathering materials, overwhelmed by the physical demands. Professor Million moved between groups, offering encouragement and advice, but kept glancing back at the humans. "How are they moving so fast?" another student asked. "Deathworld adaptation," Professor Million said quietly. "Their muscle density is approximately 8 times standard." By lunch, Owen's shelter was complete. It had a slanted roof for rain, a raised floor to avoid ground moisture, and a small fire pit dug out front. He had even woven a door from flexible branches. The whole thing looked like something from a wilderness survival show. Ben and Rita had finished their shelters too, and were now helping other students. Rita showed Pip how to identify sturdy branches without lifting them first. Ben helped Tav position logs using leverage instead of brute strength. But even their helpful demonstrations seemed almost like magic to the struggling students. Now comes the truly challenging part, Professor Million announced after lunch. Fire creation. The chemical fire starters were distributed. They worked by mixing two compounds that would ignite when combined. The process required careful measurement and steady hands. Professor Million estimated it would take most students several attempts to succeed. Rita held up her hand. Can we use traditional methods instead? Traditional methods? Professor Million asked. Friction fire. Rubbing sticks together. Professor Million's color shifted to confused purple. That is a theoretical technique mentioned in survival literature, but it requires extreme energy expenditure. No student has successfully demonstrated it in my 20 years of teaching. Mind if I try? Rita asked. She gathered a flat piece of wood and a straight stick. Then she knelt down and began spinning the stick between her palms, pressing it into the flat board. Her hands moved in a blur. Smoke appeared within seconds. She leaned down and blew gently, and a small flame sparked to life in the tinder she had prepared. Total time, 45 seconds. Several students stumbled backward. Pip made a sound like a whistle of terror. Even Professor Million went completely transparent with shock. You created combustion with your bare hands, Professor Million whispered, just through friction and pressure. My dad taught me when I was 9, Rita said, feeding small twigs to her growing fire. It's easier with dry wood like this. 9 years old, Tav repeated. Human children do this? In some cultures, yeah. It's a fun camping skill. Pip looked at their chemical fire starter, then at Rita's blazing fire, then back at the fire starter. I no longer understand what challenging means. As the sun moved toward the horizon, most students were still working on their shelters. A few had managed to create small fires using the chemical starters, celebrating their success with tired cheers. The humans had completed all tasks, helped several other students, and were now sitting around a comfortable fire, roasting the tubers Rita had found during her afternoon walk. These taste like potatoes, Owen said. Similar starch structure, Rita agreed. Perfectly safe for human consumption. I checked the cell structure earlier. You can determine molecular safety by looking, Nira asked weakly. Not molecular, but I can see if something is similar to earth plants. These have the right kind of... Please stop, Nira interrupted. My species requires 3 days of laboratory analysis before consuming new foods. You are eating something you found in the ground 30 minutes ago. Ben offered her a roasted tuber. Want to try? It's really good. Nira's translator made a sound like a faint scream. Professor Million sat apart from the students, updating the course records on their datapad. Next to the human evaluation section, they typed, Week 1 challenges completed in 3 hours. Course parameters insufficient. Recommend immediate review of all survival scenarios. Breakfast on day 3 was a quiet affair. Most students ate their nutritionally balanced ration bars in exhausted silence, still recovering from 2 days of mild physical activity. The humans, meanwhile, were energetic and restless, having slept soundly in their shelters despite the freezing 15-degree night. Professor Million gathered everyone in the clearing for the foraging lesson. This was designed to be a week 2 challenge, but they had already abandoned the original schedule after the humans completed everything early. Today, you will learn to identify safe food sources in an unfamiliar environment, Professor Million said. Using the botanical database on your datapads, locate and identify 3 edible plant species within the marked zone. Tav raised a hoof nervously. Professor, my species requires specific mineral supplements. The ration bars are precisely formulated for our needs. How long can we safely forage before risking nutritional deficiency? The ration bars will remain your primary food source, Professor Million assured him. This exercise is for emergency situations only. No one expects you to actually eat what you find. Rita was already walking into the forest, her eyes scanning the undergrowth. Owen and Ben followed, more interested in exploring than completing the assignment. They had all done plenty of foraging back on Earth. Within 20 minutes, Rita had identified 17 edible plants. She marked each one on her datapad with notes about preparation methods and nutritional content. Some needed cooking to break down tough fibers. Others were fine to eat raw. 3 had medicinal properties that could help with common ailments. This one is high in vitamin C, she said, showing Pip a small bush with red berries. And these leaves can be made into tea for upset stomachs. Pip stared at the berries. How do you know they are safe? Color pattern, leaf structure, smell, growing conditions. They match several earth species that are edible. Plus, I did a quick taste test. You put unknown substances in your mouth? Pip's feathers stood straight up. Just a tiny bit on my tongue. If it burned or tasted bad, I would have spit it out. But it was fine, so I knew it was safe. That is not how safety testing works. Pip was nearly shrieking now. You need chemical analysis and cellular breakdown studies and multi-generation testing. Rita looked confused. That seems like a lot of work for a berry. Nearby, Ben had found the stream that ran through the forest. He knelt beside it, watching the water flow over smooth stones. Small fish swam in the shallows, their scales catching the light. They looked similar to trout back on Earth. Without thinking much about it, Ben reached into the water and caught one. His hand moved fast enough that the fish barely had time to react. He held it up, examining its structure. Good size, he said to himself. Probably tastes decent grilled. Neera's tank had been positioned near the stream so she could observe aquatic life. When she saw Ben holding the fish, her translator emitted a sound like breaking glass. You touched it. With your bare hands. A living creature. Her distress was obvious even through the mechanical translation. It's just a fish, Ben said, though he was starting to realize this might be another cultural difference. That is a silver scale swimmer. They are cousins to my species. Distant cousins, but still related. Ben immediately put the fish back in the water where it swam away quickly. I'm sorry, I didn't know. On Earth, we eat fish regularly. I didn't think about it being related to you. Neera's color shifted through several shades of distress. Your species consumes other creatures regularly. We're omnivores, Ben explained. We eat plants and animals both. It's how we evolved. But that means you have predator biology. Neera was backing away now, her tank platform moving on its own. Well, yeah. Humans are persistence predators originally. Our ancestors hunted by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. The silence that followed was profound. Several students who had been nearby were now staring at Ben with new understanding and horror. Owen returned from his own foraging expedition carrying an armful of plants. He was chewing on something that looked like a large leaf. Found a spice plant, he said cheerfully. Tastes kind of like black pepper with a hint of... He stopped when he saw everyone's faces. What did I miss? Owen, Rita said carefully. What are you eating? This leaf. It has a nice kick to it. He held it up. Professor Millian floated closer, their scanner extended. The device beeped alarmingly. That is a burnleaf plant. It produces a defensive chemical that causes severe pain and tissue damage to most life forms. The database lists it as extremely dangerous. Owen looked at the leaf, then took another bite. Tastes a bit like horseradish. Pretty mild, actually. Mild. Professor Millian was flashing red now. It registers as a Class 7 chemical weapon. Humans eat chemicals for fun, Rita explained, trying to help. Capsaicin from peppers, aloe isothiocyanate from mustard and wasabi, piperine from black pepper. We call them spices. They make food taste better. You deliberately consume toxins? Tav asked weakly. They're not toxins to us, Owen said. Well, they are, but just small amounts. We like the sensation. Ben decided to be helpful and added, we also drink ethanol for recreation. It's a poison, but in controlled amounts it makes us feel relaxed. And caffeine, Rita continued. It's an insecticide that plants make to kill bugs. But we put it in our morning drinks for energy. Professor Millian's color was cycling through their entire spectrum now, unable to settle on a single emotional state. That evening, the humans prepared a meal using their foraged ingredients. They had greens, tubers, berries, and the spicy burn leaf that Owen had discovered. Rita cooked everything over the fire, using techniques she learned from her grandmother. The smell attracted curious students despite their fear. Pip approached carefully. May I ask what you are preparing? Stir-fried vegetables with roasted roots and a spicy sauce, Rita said. Want to try some? Will it damage my digestive system? Probably best if you don't try the sauce, Rita admitted. But the vegetables should be okay. I made a mild version. Pip accepted a small portion on a leaf plate. They tasted it carefully, then their eyes went wide. This is wonderful. It has so many flavors. Soon other students were gathering, trying small amounts of human cooking. Most found it overwhelming but fascinating. Tav discovered he enjoyed the roasted tubers. Even Nira tried a piece of plain vegetable through her tank's feeding port. Professor Millian watched from a distance, making notes. The humans weren't just surviving on Serenity 7, they were thriving. More than that, they were turning the survival course into something that looked suspiciously like a vacation. Note to self, Professor Millian muttered into their recorder. Human definition of edible includes substances classified as chemical weapons. Human definition of food preparation includes open flame cooking. Human definition of challenging environment remains unclear. Week 2 began with clear skies and comfortable temperatures. Professor Millian had restructured the entire course schedule overnight, moving directly to emergency scenarios. If the humans found basic survival easy, perhaps they would be appropriately challenged by disaster situations. The students were practicing water purification when Nira's sensor array started beeping. Being an aquatic species, she was extremely sensitive to atmospheric pressure changes. "Storm approaching," she announced, her translator carrying an edge of worry. "Pressure dropping rapidly. This is significant weather activity." Professor Millian checked their meteorological scanner and their color went pale blue. "Class 4 storm system. Wind speeds up to 40 kilometers per hour with heavy precipitation. We need to evacuate to emergency shelters immediately." Students began moving quickly toward the marked shelter locations. Tav struggled with his gravity harness in the rising wind. Pip was having trouble maintaining flight as gusts buffeted their small body. Owen looked at the darkening clouds. 40 kilometers per hour? That's like a strong breeze. "Owen, please take this seriously," Professor Millian said. "This is classified as an extreme weather event for Serenity 7. Right, sorry. Should we help pack up the camp first?" Professor Millian's color shifted to confused orange. "The camp is not important. Your safety is the priority. But all the equipment will get damaged," Rita pointed out, "and it's not that bad yet. We have time." Thunder rumbled in the distance. Several students whimpered. To them, storms were rare catastrophes that required planetary evacuation protocols. Their homeworlds had controlled climates with minimal weather variation. Ben was already securing loose items, moving quickly through the camp. He tied down tarps and stored delicate equipment in waterproof cases. The wind was picking up now, blowing his hair around, but he worked steadily. "This is madness," Tav called out from the shelter entrance. "Ben, please come inside." "Just finishing up," Ben called back. "Almost done." The rain started, heavy drops that sent most students running for cover. The humans continued working, now soaked but unbothered. They secured Professor Millian's equipment, stored food supplies, and even helped dismantle structures that might blow away. From the shelter entrance, Nira watched in amazement. "They are operating in rainfall. Heavy rainfall, like it is nothing." "Humans have waterproof skin," Pip said quietly, having researched Earth biology after the foraging incident. "They can regulate body temperature across a wide range. Rain does not harm them. But the wind was indeed stronger now, gusting hard enough to make trees bend. It howled around the shelters. For most species, this kind of wind was strong enough to cause serious injury or death. Their bodies were adapted for gentler worlds. Owen jogged toward Nira's shelter, barely leaning into the wind. "Nira, is your tank secure? I noticed the mounting clamps looked loose earlier." "I cannot leave the shelter to check," Nira admitted. "I'll take a look." Owen went back out into the storm. He examined Nira's tank platform, found the loose clamps she had mentioned, and tightened them with tools from his pack. Rain poured down his face. Wind pulled at his clothes. He worked calmly, making sure everything was secure. "Done," he shouted over the wind. "You're all set." A crack of lightning lit the sky. Owen glanced up, noted it was still several kilometers away, and jogged back to shelter. Inside, he found Professor Millian in a state of near panic. "You went out in lightning conditions? Do you understand what lightning is?" "Electrical discharge from cloud to ground," Owen said, wringing water from his shirt. Usually about 30,000 degrees Celsius at the bolt itself. But the odds of being struck are really low, especially under tree cover. 30,000 degrees, Professor Millian repeated faintly. "Earth gets about 8 million lightning strikes per day," Rita added, trying to be helpful. "You learned to deal with it." The storm continued for 3 hours. By galactic standards, it was a natural disaster of historic proportions. By Earth standards, it was a decent spring thunderstorm. The humans rotated through watch shifts, going outside periodically to check on equipment and make sure nothing was flooding. During one check, Rita discovered a problem. Pip's shelter had a damaged support beam and was starting to collapse under the wind pressure. The small Vreen was huddled inside, too frightened to move. "Pip, I need you to come with me," Rita called through the entrance. "I cannot fly in this wind. I will be blown away." "I'll carry you." "Carry me?" "Through the storm?" "Your shelter isn't safe." "Mine has room." "Come on." Pip hesitated, then scrambled onto Rita's shoulder. She wrapped them in her jacket for protection and stepped out into the storm. The wind immediately tried to pull them off course, but Rita leaned into it, walking steadily. Her legs, built for Earth's gravity, had no trouble maintaining balance. 2 kilometers through wind and rain. Pip clung to Rita's shoulder, amazed and terrified. They passed trees bending almost horizontal. They splashed through streams that had formed in the paths. Through it all, Rita walked like she was on an evening stroll. When they reached shelter, Pip's feathers were dry under Rita's jacket while Rita herself was completely drenched. "You walked through a Class 4 storm carrying me," Pip said in wonder. "You needed help," Rita said simply. "That's what you do." By evening, the storm had passed. Students emerged from shelters, exhausted from stress and fear. They surveyed the damage: fallen branches, flooded areas, scattered equipment. The humans emerged energized and cheerful. "That was refreshing," Ben said, stretching. "Good to get some proper weather." "Proper weather?" Tav asked weakly. "That was a disaster-level event." "Really?" "That was pretty mild. You should see a hurricane sometime." "Now those are impressive." Professor Million pulled up Earth weather data on their datapad that night. They read about hurricanes with 300-kilometer-per-hour winds, tornadoes that could turn houses into shrapnel, blizzards that buried entire cities, heat waves that made water boil in the air, monsoons that dropped years of rain in days. Earth had weather that could be weaponized. How? Professor Million asked the empty air. How did evolution produce a species that thrives in this chaos? On their datapad, a documentary about Earth played silently. It showed a human child playing in the rain, laughing as thunder rolled overhead. The child was younger than Pip. The child was having fun. Professor Million filed an official report that night. Course parameters catastrophically insufficient for Deathworld species. Human students operated effectively in conditions that incapacitated all other participants. Recommend complete curriculum revision. Also recommend psychological evaluation for myself, as I am beginning to question fundamental understanding of survival concepts. In the human shelter, Owen, Rita, and Ben played cards by flashlight, listening to rain on the roof. "Nice night," Ben commented. "Yeah," Rita agreed. "Reminds me of home." Outside, the storm had downgraded to a gentle rain. For most of the galaxy, it was still dangerous weather. For the humans, it was perfect sleeping conditions. Firelight danced across the clearing on the 12th night. The flames no longer frightened most students, though they still maintained a respectful distance. Only the humans sat close enough to feel the heat directly on their skin. Professor Million had declared a rest day after the storm, giving everyone time to recover. The humans used the time to improve their camp, while most other students simply rested. Now, as stars appeared overhead, curiosity began to overcome fear. Pip was the first to approach the fire circle. They hopped closer to where Owen was adding wood to the flames. "May I ask a question?" Pip said hesitantly. "Sure, go ahead," Owen replied. "What is Earth actually like? Everyone says it is a death world, but I do not truly understand what that means." The other humans looked at each other. Rita gestured for Pip to sit down. "That's a big question," she said. "What do you want to know?" "Everything, I suppose. Your world must be very different from ours." Other students were gathering now, drawn by curiosity. Tav settled onto the ground nearby. Nira's tank moved closer. Even Professor Million approached, their scientific interest outweighing their recent existential crisis. Ben spoke first. "Okay, so Earth is about 70% covered in water. Oceans, we call them. But humans can't drink ocean water. The salt content would dehydrate us and kill us within days." "Your planet is covered in undrinkable water?" Tav asked. "Yep, and those oceans are full of creatures that see us as food. Sharks with rows of teeth that can bite through bone. Jellyfish with tentacles that inject venom. Crocodiles that can drag full-grown humans underwater. Neera's color went pale. Your water environments are hunting grounds? Pretty much, Rita agreed. But land isn't much safer. We have bears that can weigh 500 kilograms and run 40 kilometers per hour. Cats big enough to take down prey 5 times their size. Snakes with venom that can kill you in minutes. And the small creatures too, Owen added. Mosquitoes are tiny flying insects. They drink blood and spread diseases that kill millions of humans every year. Millions? Professor Million's color flashed alarmed red. From a tiny creature? Oh yeah, mosquitoes are probably the deadliest animal on Earth to humans, more than all the big predators combined. There was silence while the alien students processed this information. But surely your planet has safe zones, Pip suggested hopefully. Areas where predators do not go? The humans looked at each other and laughed, though not unkindly. Not really, Rita said. Even in cities we get animals. Rats, pigeons, cockroaches that can survive almost anything. And outside cities, nature is everywhere. We have spiders that can jump 6 times their body length to catch prey. Plants that can cause chemical burns if you touch them. Frogs smaller than your thumb that are so poisonous that touching them can kill you. Poison dart frogs, Ben said. Beautiful colors, deadly toxins. That's how evolution works on Earth. Bright colors usually mean danger. Owen stood up and grabbed a stick to poke at the fire. The planet itself is dangerous too. The ground moves. Plate tectonics. We get earthquakes that can flatten buildings and create waves in the ocean big enough to destroy coastal cities. Your ground is unstable? Tav's voice was barely a whisper. Very. We also have volcanoes, mountains that explode and pour out molten rock at over 1,000 degrees. The ash can block out the sun for years. Rita continued the lesson. Our atmosphere is about 20% oxygen, which is really high. It means things catch fire easily. We get natural wildfires that burn for months. Lightning strikes start them, or sometimes they just start from heat and dry conditions. And the weather, Ben said, warming to the topic. We told you about storms. But Earth has everything. Hurricanes with winds over 300 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes that can turn cars into projectiles. Blizzards with snow so deep it buries houses. Heat waves where the temperature gets high enough to cook food on the ground. Stop, Professor Million said weakly. Please stop. But Pip was leaning forward, fascinated despite the horror. How do humans survive all this? You must have advanced technology from the beginning. Owen shook his head. No. Our ancestors survived with nothing but animal skins and sharp rocks. They hunted by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Humans can run for hours without stopping. Most animals on Earth can sprint fast, but we can just keep going. Persistence predators, Tav said, remembering the term from earlier. Right. And we're omnivores, so we can eat almost anything. Meat, plants, fungi, insects. If it has calories, humans figured out how to eat it. We learned to control fire 500,000 years ago, which let us cook food and stay warm and scare off predators. 500,000 years of fire use? Professor Million was taking notes now, unable to help themselves. Rita smiled. Humans have been surviving Earth for a long time. We learned to adapt. We made tools, built shelters, developed agriculture. We went from throwing spears at woolly mammoths to building spacecraft in just 10,000 years. Because we had to, Ben added. Earth doesn't give you a choice. You adapt, or you die. The fire crackled, sending sparks into the night sky. The alien students sat in stunned silence. Finally, Pip spoke. I understand now why this survival course seems easy to you. This moon is paradise compared to Earth. It's nice here, Owen agreed. Peaceful, no real dangers. Honestly, it's been relaxing. Relaxing, Tav repeated. You find this environment relaxing? Well, yeah. No predators to worry about. No extreme weather. Fresh water everywhere. Plenty of food. It's basically perfect conditions. Professor Million stood up abruptly. I need to file another report, and possibly request a sabbatical. I have been teaching survival courses for 20 years, and now I realize I have been teaching how to survive in paradise. None of us truly understand survival. You understand survival for your environments, Rita said gently. That's still important. Different doesn't mean wrong. But you are walking through conditions that would kill most species in the galaxy, and you consider it a vacation. Because we're adapted for worse, Ben explained. But that doesn't make us better. Just different. Your species have abilities we don't. Nira can sense pressure changes we can't feel. Pip can process visual information faster than any human. Tav can digest plants that would make us sick. And Professor Million can refract light in ways we find beautiful, Owen added. Everyone has strengths from their homeworld. The alien students considered this. The fear was still there, but it was mixing with understanding now. The humans weren't monsters. They were survivors of a world that tried very hard to kill everything on it, and they developed compassion anyway. Tell us about your homeworlds, Rita said. We want to understand where you come from too. And so they talked through the night, sharing stories of different worlds and different lives, finding common ground despite vast differences. The final week arrived with an announcement that made most students nervous and the humans curious. Professor Million had designed an ultimate challenge that would test everything they had learned. They would need to navigate 20 kilometers to an extraction point with limited supplies, working in teams. This is your final evaluation, Professor Million explained, their crystalline form reflecting the morning sun. You will be paired with partners from different species. The goal is not speed but successful completion. Help each other. Learn from each other. The pairing assignments appeared on data pads. Owen found himself partnered with Tav. Rita was paired with Nira. Ben would travel with Pip. Each team received a basic supply pack and a navigation device. One more thing, Professor Million added. Humans, please remember this is a challenge for your partners. Let them succeed on their own terms, Owen nodded, understanding. He had been thinking about this since their campfire conversation. The course was designed to push students to their limits, not to showcase how easily humans could complete it. The teams departed at intervals throughout the morning. Owen and Tav's route took them through varied terrain including forest, open grassland, and a rocky hillside. I must maintain slow pace, Tav said apologetically as they started. My harness can only compensate for so much gravity. That's fine, Owen said. We have all day. No rush. They walked at Tav's speed, which was slower than Owen's normal walking pace, but he didn't mind. He used the time to observe the environment, pointing out interesting plants and geological features. Tav, despite his physical limitations, had excellent pattern recognition skills. The grass is bent that direction, Tav observed. It indicates wind patterns. We should adjust our route to use it as tailwind, reducing energy expenditure. Owen checked his navigation device and found that Tav's suggested route was actually more efficient than the direct path. Good eye. Lead the way. They traveled for several hours, with Tav navigating and Owen handling the physical tasks like clearing fallen branches or carrying supplies when the terrain got rough. They worked well together, each contributing their strengths. Meanwhile, Rita and Nira faced a different challenge. Part of their route crossed through wetlands where Nira's tank would struggle with the muddy terrain. I am slowing you down, Nira said through her translator. You could complete this course in a fraction of the time without me. But I'd miss out on your company, Rita said honestly. Besides, you're the one who spotted that shortcut through the reed beds earlier. Saved us at least an hour. My aquatic senses detected the water flow patterns, Nira explained. But now we face ground that my tank cannot traverse. Rita examined the muddy section ahead. What if I carry your tank? Just for this part. That is a 200-kilogram tank, Nira protested. I can manage it for a kilometer or so, if you're okay with it. With Nira's nervous permission, Rita lifted the habitat tank onto her shoulders. It was heavy, but Rita had carried heavier loads during Earth camping trips. She walked carefully through the mud, her boots sinking in with each step but her balance never wavering. You are incredible, Nira said quietly. Your species' strength is beyond my comprehension. Your species can survive in both water and various chemical solutions, Rita countered. You can filter nutrients from environments that would poison me. That's pretty incredible too. Ben and Pip had perhaps the most interesting journey. Pip could fly, which gave them an advantage in scouting. but their small size made them vulnerable to wind and weather. "There is a cliff ahead," Pip reported, returning from a scouting flight. 3 meters high. The route around it adds 4 kilometers to our journey. Ben studied the cliff face. 3 meters was barely a climb for him, but for Pip it would be impossible with their equipment. "What if you fly up and I climb while carrying the supplies?" Ben suggested. "We can help each other." They reached the cliff and Ben began to climb. The handholds were small and the rock was rough, but his fingers found purchase easily. Pip flew alongside, offering encouragement and pointing out stable holds that were hard to see from below. At the top, they rested. Pip's flight muscles were tired from fighting wind currents. Ben shared his water and they ate lunch together, looking out over the landscape. "When we return to campus, what will you study?" Pip asked. "Astrophysics. Want to understand how stars work? Maybe help design better engines for spacecraft." "You?" "Atmospheric sciences. I wish to predict weather patterns so that flyers like me can travel safely." Pip paused. "Though after meeting you, I realize my definition of dangerous weather was very limited." Ben laughed. "Different perspectives. That's what makes the galaxy interesting." As the day progressed, all 3 teams made steady progress. They faced challenges appropriate to their abilities. Tav navigated difficult terrain while Owen handled physical obstacles. Nira identified safe paths through water, while Rita provided mobility. Pip scouted from above while Ben managed the climbing. By evening, teams began arriving at the extraction point. They were tired but successful. More importantly, they had learned to work together, combining human endurance with alien expertise. Professor Million greeted each team personally, their color a warm gold with pride. "You have all exceeded expectations," they announced when everyone had arrived. "Not by finishing quickly, but by helping each other succeed. That is the true purpose of survival training." Back at campus a week later, the graduation ceremony filled the main hall. Students from all species gathered to receive their survival course certifications. But this year, something unusual happened. "We are introducing a new program," Professor Million announced. "Comparative survival studies. Students will learn from each other's environmental adaptations. Humans will teach advanced physical survival techniques. Other species will share their unique abilities. Tav would teach pattern recognition and efficient navigation. Nira would instruct on sensory awareness and environmental analysis. Pip would lead sessions on spatial reasoning and risk assessment. The humans would cover physical endurance, fire management, and emergency medicine. "We learn better together," Professor Million concluded. "Every species has survived by adapting to their world. By sharing knowledge, we all become more capable." Owen, Rita, and Ben received special certifications as assistant instructors. They also enrolled in courses taught by their alien friends, eager to learn new skills. Months later, the first comparative survival workshop took place on Serenity 7. A mixed group of species worked together, teaching and learning. Humans demonstrated shelter construction, while Nira taught water safety. Pip led navigation exercises while Tav shared foraging efficiency techniques. One evening, as another mixed group gathered around a campfire, a new human student asked the question that Pip had asked months before. "What's Earth really like?" Owen, now a seasoned instructor, smiled. "It's challenging, but humans didn't survive alone. We had each other, and we learned to cooperate. That's the real lesson, not how tough humans are, but how cooperation makes everyone stronger." Pip, perched nearby, added their own wisdom. "Every world produces survivors. Earth produced survivors who learned compassion despite the danger. That is worth more than strength." The fire crackled peacefully. Around it, species from across the galaxy sat together, learning from each other, protecting each other, and building something better than any of them could achieve alone. Professor Million watched from a distance, their color a contented blue. They had filed their final report weeks ago. It contained just one sentence. "Survival is not about enduring alone, but about thriving together." The survival course had changed forever, but for the better. And somewhere on a distant death world called Earth, other humans continued their daily lives, never knowing that their simple camping skills had revolutionized galactic survival training. The galaxy was learning an important lesson. Strength comes in many forms, and wisdom means learning from everyone.